Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Looking for Love in All the Wrong Dust Jackets, a show where three disgruntled harpies talk to you about everything we love in romance, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, whatever we like. My name's Liz.
I'm Danny.
I'm Wiggles.
And welcome to the episode. Today we are discussing Quicksilver by Callie Hart. But before we get into that, I do have to warn you, I got to let the people know that we are crass and unhinged. We're terribly unladylike. And we like to talk about all of the naughty times using all them four-letter words. Wiggles, do you want to tell us about Callie Hart?
I would love to. Callie Hart is a USA Today best-selling author of dark romance novels. She's an obsessive romantic who loves throwing a dark twist into her stories. Her characters are imperfect, flawed individuals who dictate when she eats, sleeps, and breathes. She loves to travel, often pens her books when she's on the road, drawing inspiration from her surroundings. Also, if you go to her page and you sign up for her newsletter, you can get access to special POV chapters.
Oh my.
Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge, check it out. And she has little frequently asked questions. And the first one, I think, is the one that we all want to know the answer to. When will book 2 in the Fae and Alchemy series come out? Now that Quicksilver has been traditionally published, book 2 in the series has a scheduled release date of fall 2025. So, check it out.
That's so far away.
I was going to say, that's so long from now.
It's not comparatively. And I'm like, here's the thing. I would rather someone take their time.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
no. I agree. It's just one of those things that every time somebody tells us a date, we're like, but so far away. It's just like when I told you the video game is coming out in March. We're very upset.
Look, I don't know what's happening the next 24 hours of my life.
That's
so
true.
the idea of fall 2025 feels like 50 years from now.
It very well might be.
Yeah.
Am I going to enter a time rift?
Perhaps. Who's to say?
Wild.
These are unprecedented times, Liz. So who's to say? There might be aliens.
I was just about to say an alien might come find me.
Who knows? But what I do want to know is, Danny, what's this book about?
So many things. So this book is about Saeris, who is she's kind of a thief and street rat, kind of, in a really poor section of the city she lives in, that they kind of have a dictator queen who's wanting to kill off the entire ward she lives in, essentially. She fucks up one day and steals part of the armor from one of the queen's guard and scurries over a wall with it and is trying to figure out where to go to sell it. She tries to talk to a friend of her and her brother's that kind of helped raise them, per se, after her mother was killed. And he's a smith, and that's where she's learned to do all the melting down of things. And he says, the fuck you will in my place. And so she goes to try to find a different place to get rid of it, and she's looking for her brother. She finds her brother. She hands him the gauntlet, sticks him outside, and goes to talk to one of my favorite characters in the entire book, which is Carrion, who is a guy she used to fuck.
One time,
but apparently it was good.
One time. They were drunk. She was hot. He got lucky.
But apparently it was real good. But she's going to yell at him about gambling with her brother. And then all hell breaks loose, and the guards track down her poor, sweet, dum-dum brother Hayden, and she fights and kills multiple of the guards and gets dragged to the castle. A lot of fancy shit happens that we will discuss, and she ends up holding a sword and getting disemboweled, and this pool of silver erupts. And then she gets taken to a whole new world, and she gets healed, and she's in the world of the Fae. There's so many other things. I can't go into all of it. So
much to talk about.
There's a very hot man.
Of course there is.
And to even pick a place to start, I think is the hardest part.
I think what I want to start with is just to get the things I don't like off the table, just to put them out there, and then we can just have the fun stuff.
But if we start with the bad, let's start with one good thing. I don't want to start with the bad.
But there's not that much bad.
All right. You lead the charge.
Well, Okay. So, like, the first thing, I did not like at all the male female for like designation for everybody. The way that was used to replace man and woman, it just felt weird. And I was like, please stop saying it.
I guess to me it did and didn't feel weird because like they made it was a very small moment, but they made a distinct difference when Saeris tried to call somebody a man or a woman, and they were like, no, that's human. Those are human words. We are fae.
Yeah.
See, and the male female thing only bothers me if it's a fully like human book.
So there's two reasons it bothers me. One, it's clunkier.
It is.
To
It doesn't
read. But the other thing is, it's like, because you're designating everybody male or female, it implies that no one else in this vast world where you've got creatures of all shapes and sizes is ever like, I'm neither of those things.
I mean, true.
Yeah, there wasn't any sort of queer representation at all. There was tiny little hints from Carrion that he like, you know, he'll go either way and he'll fuck whatever, but that's about it.
Yes. And so I don't know. That part I didn't like. So that's a quick check off the list. We got that one out of the way. The other things that I didn't like, most of them are really small, except that there was like an issue with us just jump in time and get into places where it's like, I would go back to the page before. I'm like, you didn't say that. How is it true over here when it wasn't back there? What the fuck?
I guess I didn't notice that as much, but Liz and I both listened to the audiobook and you read it.
Yeah.
So the big one, like, there were other smallish ones where I was like, okay, I can let that pass, whatever. But like the big one for me was the ring. She at one point seduces Kingfisher and steals his ring 'cause she thinks that she can get through the Quicksilver pool with it. Except that the entire chapter before, not an ounce of that is mentioned. It doesn't exist. This plot that has happened only exists in the author's head, and we get to hear about it afterwards from Kingfisher, that like, I always knew you had my ring, and like we see her running down the halls with it and get her point of view and her plan, but like there's nothing to imply that happened whatsoever in the scene prior.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because the scene that she supposedly got his ring is this big, like the first time that they ever have like a sexual reaction to each other and they kind of like make out. Kingfisher is basically like, I dare you, is essentially the vibe.
Yes.
To kiss me and see what happens. And so we get this kind of like swell of emotions and like whatever, but we don't get,
and then I took my hand and I slowly pulled his ring.
Yeah.
Or even the intention of, I can use this to my advantage. That's not even a thought that's going on in her head from the narration's point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the author really loved her reveals, and
she did.
And I did enjoy them a lot. In fact, this is a weird segue because it's not a bad thing. It's actually a reaction to some of the reviews I read. I read a lot of reviews for this, and some of them were disappointed that we didn't get any of Kingfisher's POV. But I think, for me personally, I think that would have, like, I don't think it would have worked to get Kingfisher's POV. Like,
I would agree with that. I like having just her POV.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't get any of the reveals because Kingfisher knew all of that already.
Yeah.
And which there are a lot of reveals. But also because Kingfisher had all of the information about like them being fated mates and like all of the shit with Bellicon and the vampires and all of that, you wouldn't get the pacing.
Right.
Because
agreed.
Saeris gets information and then she has to process it and then like apply it to previous thoughts, and like that's almost kind of what drives the pacing. Whereas Kingfisher's, like, his narration would have just been cyclical, like, fuck, I want to fuck her, but I can't, but I want to, but I can't, but also I gotta save everybody, but I can't tell them that I'm gonna do it because otherwise they're gonna stop me. Like, that's his whole fucking internal monologue.
Well, and I can't tell them this, that, and the other thing about this situation because I'm bound and can't.
Also true. There's just things that he can't say because of his blood oath.
Well, and I think the only thing that would have been like new information that we wouldn't have gotten from the text the way she set it up anyway would have been Kingfisher's confused reaction to finding out that they are mates. Like he knew that they were mates, but he didn't know until the tattoos showed up, you know?
Right.
And so getting him processing that and going, oh fuck, that's something.
Or the initial, like, him seeing Saeris and being like, are you kidding me? A fucking human?
Right?
You're not supposed to be human.
Yeah. But otherwise, I don't think it would have.
Yeah, no, and I liked personally just having the one perspective too, because when you're introducing your audience to a new world, if you're also getting someone's perspective who has lived in that world, then you limit the experience to not being wondrous. It's just commonplace, right? Like at one point she talks about how beautiful the mountains are, and he's like, yeah, I guess they are. It's because he's not paying attention to them, because it's just...
He grew up around the mountains. She grew up in a desert where she doesn't even know what night is, because there's 2 suns. It's always day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so fucking hot. And she gets to see snow for the first time.
Right.
And she gets to see night and the stars for the first time. And I love that for her.
Or just the wonderment of like, look at all the water.
Yeah, oh my god. When she's in the sick bed and they like come in and hand her a cup of water, like,
I can just like have this.
I can has this? What?
Right.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Are you going to make me pay for this?
Well, and the flip side of that is, so I'm reading When the Moon Hatched, and the characters all grew up in this world. So every page I'm just like, what are you guys talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way to introduce this as new information to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I am reading Priority of the Orange Tree and having a very similar experience.
Sure.
And I've been reading it for a long time because of that. Because I'll backtrack and I'll be like, I don't know what any of this means.
Well, maybe if you didn't read 8 books at a time, Wiggles.
Listen, I don't need your sass. I don't need your attacks. I need more books.
Hey, I was reading 2 at a time this time.
Look at you go.
Because I needed to read this book, and then the Hell's Bells prequel book came out, and
Well, that was that then.
I'm obsessed. So
Soon you'll be like me.
because now this book is done, and I will finish For Whom the Bell Tolls probably this weekend.
Those were my 2 main gripes. There were some other like little typo, like run-on sentence sort of things. I knowing now that it was not traditionally published before,
Sure.
and then makes me really question the like quality of editing that was happening at that publisher, because it was already edited to be self-published. And then all you had to do was go through and like do a good old proof. And they were like, nah.
Honestly, maybe they were just like, nah, we're just going to copy paste, go.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Like there are some things where it's like, oh, like you could have just taken a little time. And they
Cleaned
said,
it up a bit.
not today, not for me, which is kind of tragic because it's a stain on an otherwise really, really good book.
I guess I didn't notice the run-on sentences, but that it's hard to notice in an audiobook.
Yeah.
I will say I think it was a little overwritten. There were we spent too much time, I think, in some descriptive places.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it really didn't bother me a whole lot.
Nope.
So it's like such a tiny little thing.
Well, and most of that was at the beginning when
Yes.
you were getting all the lore.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was a lot to get.
Yes. So for me, I read a big chunk of like 300 pages in the middle, all in one night. But that's because the first like 100 or so pages, it was like, it wasn't like hard to read. It was a quick read, but it was just like not nearly as interesting. I was like, oh, all right. You're telling us the things we need to know, and I appreciate that. But
Lore dump, and then
yeah.
what-ah, and you're like, oh my, okay.
I guess I really liked the beginning because it felt like, to me, like, yes, there was a lot of descriptive and stuff, but it was, hey, you're in the action right away.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the characters. You don't know how important they are, but they're here. And so I'm like, they got to be important eventually. When she spent so much time on Carrie and Swift in the beginning, I was like, oh, so he's coming back.
Oh, I
This man is...
prayed that man came back. He's my favorite.
Yeah.
There was a part before we meet Kingfisher that I was like, wait, is Carrion going to be our guy?
I thought
like,
for just a second,
this could be
the
wild.
energy there was great.
Like, she just gets kidnapped by the Fae, basically, and he comes and rescues her? Like, what do we got going on here? Because I'm like, I'm interested, okay?
Yeah, because the description of this book, like on Goodreads and stuff, gives you no information.
Well, and you know I never read
We don't
those
read
anyway.
that shit anyway.
Yeah.
We're not here for that.
Who
Once
reads
a book is
background stuff?
decided, I just assume it's all good, and I go forward
I
blind.
read what you tell me to.
Yes.
Fair. I had one major gripe with this book, and
Okay.
it's actually pretty big. Like,
Mhm.
it's knocking down at least half a star, this one gripe. All of the female characters fit into all of the classic archetype female characters.
Yeah.
We have Saeris, who is the heroine,
Mhm.
and she's sassy, and she's quick to action, but that also means she's quick to mistakes. Classic. We have Madra, evil queen. We have Everlane, sister, princess who gets captured and is a pawn. Classic. We have the healer. I don't remember her name, but she's nice like every healer is. And then we have Dana, who is the one and only female warrior that we really get to see. And of course, she's the bitch of the group.
To be fair to the entirety of the book, the men have a very similar problem. They're very tropey as well. But that is the problem. I would say that is like you say, the big gripe is this book leans way too heavily on tropes.
Yeah.
And so it did make some of the things that happened. I was like, oh, okay. So
right.
This is it. Okay. So this is what's going to happen next. Right.
Like when we find out that Kingfisher and Saeris are fated mates, I was
course.
like, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was just waiting for
course.
him to reveal that to her.
Some of the things I think the author did a really good job of giving us the classic expected trope, but then making it more meaningful than it normally is. So like the blood oath that Kingfisher, I wouldn't say tricks Saeris in, but also certainly kind of tricks her into.
Which is a Fae thing.
It is
a Fae thing, and it comes up in a lot of books that involve the Fae. But the reason that I hated it at first, but by the end of the book, I liked it, is because we get the beginning where Saeris is extremely impulsive. She steals that gauntlet knowing it's probably a bad idea, but just cannot let go of this like impulse to take it. And so what she obviously has to learn with the blood oath is you need to stop, you need to think, you're going to get into trouble. The reason that I liked it, or I liked that Callie Hart took it to the next level, is we then find out at the end that Kingfisher not only also fell into a blood oath that not only fucked himself, killed 20,000 people, and caused him to basically be tortured for 150 years. And Kingfisher is a millennia old, and he did that only 150 years ago. So I liked it because it wasn't just the haha, I tricked you to teach you a lesson. It was, I tricked you to teach you the lesson that I just fucked up.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that really makes this book and makes it so you can really turn a blind eye to a lot of the things that we've talked about is she made Kingfisher a character that was all of the things on the surface that he looked like. Most of them weren't real. And so the reveal of him actually not having an issue with her being human other than being disappointed at how little time they could possibly have, like the very first thing we hear from him is Saeris hearing when he saves her that he says pathetic, referring to her, is what she thinks. And then he's like, that was about me. Like, I'm pathetic. I should have just left you there, but I was too weak because I knew this shit was going to be fucked. And we're brought over here because I'm fucked and you're just going to be in my fucking mess with me if you're here, right?
The kinder thing to do would have been to just let you die at that point.
Right.
But I'm pathetic and couldn't do it.
Right. And so you keep finding out that this character who feels like it's the same archetype that we get over and over and over again really isn't, while simultaneously Saeris is growing out of being the tropey character that we meet at the beginning. And so I think that's what really makes it work.
Her first impression of him, because she's literally been disemboweled. She's dying. And she's like, first of all, I'm going to take this motherfucker with me. And then when she's dying and Kingfisher comes, she thinks he's death. She thinks he is the personification of death because his whole like magic and movements is like black swirling sand.
Yeah, he's another shadow boy.
He is a shadow boy. I liked it. It was hot.
You know what I gotta say though? The whole time, the description that we get of Kingfisher is that he would tower over a human man, right? Like he's much bigger and all Fae are and all of that. And then the guy that got on the front cover looks like a Timothée Chalamet knockoff. What is that?
One of the biggest gripes I've seen about this book on TikTok is the cover is atrocious.
It's so bad.
It is. I forgot what the cover looked like, and then today when it ended, I went to go switch it to something else, because God forbid there be silence in my life. And I went and that is not Kingfisher.
No.
I was totally. No. I went to rate it on Audible as well, and was like, oh, that's what the cover looks like. I remember now. It's horseshit.
It's bad.
It's so bad. I'm just like, I can't look at that image and get like, no, we're going to pretend that ain't real. Yeah. You know, the thing though that I love about this story the most is that every time I thought they were going to do something like, okay, they're going to go get Hayden, for example, and he comes back with her ex. I'm like,
I was
shit is hilarious.
Terrified for just a second that Carrion all along was like her brother.
I did have those moments where I was like, don't tell me that.
Because I was having a retching moment. I was like, nope.
I every time I thought that, I was like, there's no way the author would do that, because we find out, like, the first thing we find out about Carrion is that Saeris and he slept together.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so he's supposed to be able to find her with her blood and then brings back Carrion. And I'm like, oh, that ain't right.
But apparently he can smell that they had sex a month ago.
Right.
And I'm like, then what are you smelling? Like, what is the world to you? Is it just horrible, awful sex smells everywhere?
Right.
Right.
Like, okay, you can't tell me. Like, they were like, oh, everybody can smell that we've had sex. And I'm like, can everybody smell that everybody's having sex? Are you going to tell me that no one else in that castle has had sex? Fuck off.
No one else bumped uglies? Nah.
No one else at that encampment had sex? No.
They have fucking families there because of how much time they've spent there.
Right. Those kids didn't appear out of the ether.
I mean,
So I think everybody's just way too invested in Kingfisher's love life.
I mean,
I think
get
everybody's
it,
way
though.
too invested in Kingfisher.
That's true.
That's fair. They all worship the ground he walks on, which I found to be a delightful, like, growth in the plot, because when we first meet Kingfisher, like, I think his first words are, "You got to be fucking kidding me," or something like that. And which I was not ready for. I was like, oh, the Fae. They're all like, ha ha ha, we're the Fae, not fuck.
Yes, I did really enjoy that element of it.
But then just, like, slowly the progression of being in the Winter Court, and Kingfisher is like this bastard person who let Gilfry the town burn and get sacked and stuff. And then just, like, as we get away from the Winter Court, everybody is like, oh no, it's Kingfisher. He saved us from this and that and this and that. And at one point somebody said, it was on the 5th day at dawn when he cried something. And I was like, thank you for the Lord of the Rings reference. Or Bill the horse.
Well, and it's
I did like Bill the horse.
I did like
Bill the
Bill the
horse.
horse. I was like, oh, wonderful. I also liked that Carrion named his sword Simon.
That's from something, isn't it?
I don't remember.
I swear to
I
God, it's
just
from
figured
something.
it was like Simon Says, and at some point in the next book, what I want is for Carrion to go, Simon says, shut up, and like he cuts somebody's head off. But that's just my.
I also struggled, just while we're on names for a second, and then we can go back to what we were talking about, but I also struggled a little bit with Saeris Fane, because there's a character in the Wheel of Time book called Padden Fane, who is also kind of like a skullduggery-esque character. And I was just like, nope, this is the main character in this book. You can't hate her just because of her name.
Oh, but so there's a part where he's stolen her away from the Winter Palace, away from his stepfather, who's a prick, and they're staying in a tavern, not really staying, and they're at an inn, essentially, and they're meeting up, and he's trying to hide the fact of who he is, because he doesn't like the attention. And she thinks he's just trying to hide the fact of who he is because of what she saw in the Winter Court, where everyone treats him like complete and utter shit. And then people in this inn realize who he is, and they just, like, erupt with announcements of all the good deeds he's done, and all of the announcements of what Renfus has done.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because he is almost as highly regarded.
I know.
Well, he's been holding down the fort for the last 150 years.
Yep.
So
While Kingfisher was banished. That's what they said in the Winter Court, is that he was banished. But then all of his people were like, you just disappeared.
I think that was Bellican, like, taking credit.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he was actually banished. Like, Malcolm says many times that he could have left the labyrinth at any point and chose not to, because he was dedicated to getting those people free of this curse they're under.
Right.
So I don't think he actually was banished. I think like it feels to me like a world like that banishment is more less enforced by law and more enforced by some kind of magic.
Sure.
So the other character who I would say doesn't fit that model of tropiness is Carrion. Like he is kind of the trope of the like over exaggerated X kind of thing, but he doesn't really fit in the book. If this book was every other fantasy book that exists out there, they would have brought Hayden in, or
Right.
they would have brought her best friend or something like that. You don't bring your ex to go on an adventure with you.
I think that's why Carrion was so great, is just because every scene he was in, he was just like either breaking the tension with weird jokes or random things. I love at one point, so they're deciphering this note that Kingfisher left them because it's at the very end and he's going to go martyr himself to the vampires to save his sister. And everybody's like, how are we going to do this? Oh my God, well, how are we going to go and save Kingfisher? And Carrion's just like, yo, why don't you just go through the gate that he fucking opens?
Right.
And I'm like, come on, guys. Carrion should not be the one who figured that out.
He's also the one who figured out the Quicksilver.
Yeah, why don't you just ask the Quicksilver what to do?
If it talks to you, why don't you just be nice to it and say, hey, would you do this for me?
Like, why don't you just ask how to do it?
I know. I do love, though, after the whole gate situation, and Renfis is like, I could just kiss you. And Carrion goes, well, maybe later.
Maybe. Not saying no. I think my favorite thing about Carrion is that the whole time I couldn't make him make sense, because I was like, why are you getting involved with this shit? This has nothing to do with you, my guy. So like, I don't understand why you want to train. That's weird. Like, why do you want to be involved with these like high risk missions? That's weird. And then at the end, you're like,
Motherfuckers
okay.
I guess I didn't have like a lot of question as to why he would like do it. I just assume that because we find out at the very beginning that Carrion, as much of a scoundrel and a cheat and a thief he is, he also does have a little bit of a heart, because he's the one who tells Saeris, you need to get the gauntlet out of the third before they burn this fucking place down and everybody we care about in it.
Yeah, he cares about the people in the third who are suffering, and
Right.
he wouldn't have to be in the third, but he does.
Right.
The reason I think that though that isn't quite a good enough excuse to like justify his actions is that if he truly is a human, he is not strong enough to keep up. He is not quick enough to keep up, right? And he would know his own limitations. He's not stupid. And on top of that, he's got many people to flirt with. Many people.
And they're hot.
Yeah. And so it doesn't quite add up, because and I think she could have done a little bit stronger job covering it up if he sort of fell into some of those moments.
Sure.
But almost all of them were like, I volunteer. And you're like, why?
Why, sir?
Why do you volunteer?
I always just kind of got the vibe that he was like, I'm on borrowed time at this point. I'm just, whatever. I don't give a fuck. But one of my favorite little headcanon moments that I had. So at the end, we find out Carrion is not only Fae, he's actually the heir to the throne. Bellicon shouldn't be there. It should be Carrion. And so one of the things at the very beginning when they're talking about Saeris and him having sex, is Saeris is like, it was really good though. He's really good at it. And in my brain at the end of the book, I was like, of course he's good at sex. He's been fucking for 1,000 years. Because that's all he wants to do.
He's like, this is the only thing that brings me joy. So with how hard he went after Telena, I just keep thinking that he is going to be like, so Saeris, Kingfisher, let's talk about this.
I don't think he likes Kingfisher though. Like, he doesn't not like him, but it's also one of those like, you stay over there.
True.
I definitely think if there's not a moment where he and Renfis go, maybe, I'm gonna be upset.
The only reason I'm not sure about him and Renfis is I kept getting the feeling that Renfis has feelings for Everlane.
I was getting that from Lorith.
Really? They never interact.
But the way he responds to Everlane getting captured or kidnapped is like massive.
I assume that was the part of Kingfisher's soul that's in him.
I mean, it might be.
But I don't know. I could be so fucking wrong. It could be that they're like, they've never really met or interacted, but they're their mates or something shit like that. Who knows? Literally, who knows? Because every time I'm like, oh, sure, this is going to be what it's going to be. She's like, no,
You know who
it's
could
not.
be an interesting couple, though? Carrion and
Dana?
Dana.
Well, he did get all like, she said I was pretty. When Dana said some offhanded quip about you're pretty humans.
Mm-hmm. They could be an interesting couple because it would be like a reverse Grumpy Sunshine.
It would be a very classic combination to have the overly outgoing and bubbly and extroverted man be with the really bitchy woman.
Here's the thing about her character. Like, I'm hoping that she does something to, like, help us justify it. Because, like, even if a human, let's say, like, murdered her mother or something like that, like, it doesn't make sense in the context of everything else. Like, everybody else is like, we don't hate humans, we hate what we did to humans, right? Like, and her reaction to a human, like, she's having a reaction that literally no one else is having, regarding Saeris, and it's like, where is this coming from?
This is terrible to say, but I interpreted it as either one of two things. She had the hots for Kingfisher, or she doesn't like that another woman is getting attention over her.
But neither of those really feel right either, because like she was at the point where she was literally going to kill Kingfisher, and Saeris had to step in. So that doesn't really feel right.
I feel like it had more to do with, because while Renfis knows what happened to Kingfisher, kind of not, he knows he was being held hostage essentially. She doesn't, and so in her eyes he just fucking dipped, and it's more to do with that, I think, than anything else.
Well, the reason that she was so mad at Kingfisher, but that I found super confusing, because if Renfis at least understands that Kingfisher wasn't there with them by like force or like a lack of his choice. So, I mean, it kind of was his choice, but obviously he was making the choice for the greater good. Why is Dana having such a hard time with it?
Right.
Like, if everybody else is like, no, this is Kingfisher, he had to do this. Like,
she felt like a useless antagonist.
Yes.
Like, she existed to be a problem, and that's it. And
she causes problems, because when they went to the witches for help, the reason they didn't come initially was because that bitch.
She said a bunch of bigoted shit.
Yeah.
Like, she's very clearly in the what it would be in this world is racist.
Well, and the thing with that, though, is there was literally zero reason. The only reason that Dana, as far as plot-wise, said all that shit is so that Dana wasn't there when they did the whole let's jump through the gate and get Kingfisher.
Yeah.
Because he sent her back to the front because she was being too much of a problem.
Right.
Because as far as the plot to get the witch, it was, Dana was being a bitch. We sent her away. Kingfisher went back to get her. And
that
then
feels
got
like
her.
One of those moments that didn't have to happen. Like,
no, it didn't.
He could have just been like, you're insulting Saeris. Get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm done. I'm not in the mood for this shit. Go back to the front. And then she's not there.
Or it could have been because she was already bitching that like they were having to spend all this time reading and researching. It could have been, well, if you are not helpful here, then we'll send you back to where you are helpful. Like, it just didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
No, it did not. And the only other thing I could think, like, the author's sort of headspace might have been for that is that it helped slow us down a little bit. Because we had to read through that process happening before we could jump from he's gone off to get this witch, and then all of a sudden we're in Malcolm's world. Like, it gave us a little buffer time there.
But we had the buffer time because we had sexy times.
We did.
That was
have
enough
sexy
buffer.
Times.
Doesn't count.
They were good sexy times too. Not the greatest sexy times, but they were good.
Well, since we're here, let's talk about the sexy times.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, I thought it was fine.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
So while it wasn't the most adventurous sex book I've read, that would take a lot. The scenes were well written, although I wish they would have focused a little more on the sex when the sex was happening.
Right. That was my biggest gripe is like sex. There'd be like a couple paragraphs about the actual activity, and then we'd be having all of these revelations. And I'm like, no, you're breaking it up, but in a way that's taking me out of the scene.
I did not have that problem at all. But the thing that this book had in like ripping off the page that I fucking live for is the angst, right?
The tension. That's what I was gonna say, is it had the great tension.
So good. And so, like, for me, I loved all of it. I was just like, oh, the tension. Oh,
I love the fighting.
The fighting. I loved it all. And so I felt like the amount of attention to the sex was appropriate for the book.
I agree.
That's fair. I think maybe I'm just like a little bit colored by the last sex scene because I loved the makeout scene. I liked the very first sex scene. And what I loved about the very first sex scene the most is that didn't change their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because so many books, it's like, we've had sex. Now we're not going to like have all the angst and the griping and the stuff
Oh,
anymore.
yeah, no, it was constant.
It was like,
Yes.
nothing has changed.
I think my favorite one was I think it's the second time that they have sex and fallen asleep together.
Yes.
It's this thing where they're like, if either of us speaks, we're going to break the tension and we'll both just stop. And so they're not saying anything. And that's when Saeris is like talking to him through her mind. And I was like, this is so good.
that one was very good. I loved the like the constant tension and like the are we doing this, are we not, like just inching closer to the action, I guess.
Well, and the like heady feeling of she's like imagining that she's conjured his voice in her head perfectly and that he seems to be reading her mind, but it turns out that they can just communicate telepathically. But like in that moment of being like just so in sync.
By the way, the speaking directly in her ear when he's not near her.
Pretty good in the audiobook.
Yep.
He does so many things to Saeris that aren't like bad. They're not. It's like the only bad thing he did is the blood oath and like compelling her, which to be fair, he only did in a couple of very key moments.
Yes.
But just the little shit he does to her, I'm like, dude, you're just trying to poke the bear, and I kind of love it.
Yep.
Well, he does own that at the end. He's like,
Yes.
I was intentionally an asshole.
She's like, yeah, I know.
He's like, I'm not gonna really say I'm sorry, but just so you know, I was.
Yeah. I think one of the tropes that I hate, and it doesn't just happen in fantasy, it happens in everything, but it usually happens in books that have some sort of like fated mate component, where one of the two, typically the male main character, decides that, I have to push her away, so I'm going to be mean and terrible and a bad person.
Mhm.
I was getting kind of annoyed with that.
Yeah, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, why?
Trying
Like,
so hard, dude, to like be a dick.
right?
And you are succeeding, so there's that.
You're doing really well at it. Congrats.
I kind of forgave it at the end when we didn't get the typical tropey answer. We got the, well, you were my weakness and I didn't want us to be together and blah, blah, blah. But he actually admits to originally hating her. So like there
Yeah.
was a lot of truth in some of the way he was acting in the beginning.
Yes. Well, and I also forgave it a little bit because he wasn't doing a bad job about it. Like a lot of the ones that we read, it's like
They're
when
lashing
they're
out for no reason.
yeah, when they're
whatsoever.
pretending to be a dick, it's like there's literally there's no justification for why you would be a dick in this moment.
It's completely nonsensical. And you're like, why, dude? You just
Right?
look like you're bipolar at this point.
Yes. And so it's like, come on. Versus this, like he genuinely was like in moments setting her up to fail and just referencing all of her weak points and, tearing her down that way.
Yeah.
And so like he was putting in the effort and putting in the time to be a dick.
Mhm.
He wasn't half-assing it. And I guess I, in a weird way, appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, and in the beginning, he was being pretty fucking rude to everyone. Obviously, it was
Yes.
way worse for her, but like
Yes.
even his friends, he was being an absolute dick too.
The one thing I couldn't pin down, because it was really clear to me, I was like, oh, well, obviously, he's the guy, right?
Mhm.
But it was probably like 20 pages or so into them knowing each other. I was like, this is fated mates.
Yeah.
I feel it
Yeah.
in my bones, like,
Yeah.
and so the thing that was really hard for me to pin down was, does everybody else know? Or does especially at the beginning, do they just know? Like, has he admitted it to them, or can they pick up on it? Or do they slowly start to suspect? Like, because the fire sprite seems to fucking know.
Well, and Renfus knows pretty quickly too, because he
Mhm.
says things like, "Oh, if I let the reason for Kingfisher's existence to get hurt," it's
That's
like
way later in the book that he says that.
that line is, but he
Yeah.
does know. He does say other things way earlier.
Right. But he could also just be a nice guy. Like, that's the thing that's really hard about it. It's like,
Yeah.
was he really just being like, Kingfisher, quit being an asshole to this person that you literally need help from? Could you not?
Well, to be honest, between Everlane, Kingfisher, and Renfus is the nicest person.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I like Everlane.
Really?
Yeah, because as much as she was like, I guess, trying to help Saeris in the beginning, it was all selfish reasons, right? Like they purposefully were like keeping information from her or like putting her in situations where she was going to fail. Like it just felt like she was being a little cagey.
I think she kind of had to, because she doesn't agree with her father.
No, she doesn't like her father at all.
No, but I think was doing her best to keep Saeris from getting hurt in the Winter Court. It's a little Game of Thronesy where it's the court is a very dangerous place. And so she's trying her best to get her educated on customs and everything so that somebody in the court doesn't take a minor offense and Saeris get hurt.
Right. And maybe it's just like a lack of emotional like intelligence of, hey, this woman who was on death's door is now in a realm that she doesn't know exists. She didn't know all you people existed. Maybe give her a fucking moment to breathe.
I think the read I got from Everlane, and I don't totally like dismiss her behavior or anything like that because of it, but I do think that she was way on her back foot. Like Kingfisher coming back through everything into whack, and then he just drops this fucking human on her who's basically dead and is like, you know, take care of her. I'm going to give you my necklace, which means I'm going to go insane. And I know you know this. So Renfist is also not going to be around to help you. And you're on your own. Figure it out. Keep her safe. You have to keep her safe. And also, you know, the king, your dad, is going to make everything harder. So have fun with that. Bye for 12 days.
Why did Saeris need his necklace, though, after they got back through the Quicksilver? Is it just because they didn't know if she was impacted?
It helps get the Quicksilver out of her body.
Why did she have Quicksilver in her body, though? She shouldn't have had it.
It entered her when she went in.
But she had the necklace on already.
She had the medallion on, but from the impression I got is that these like relics, which his is one of the only ones left, all of the magic from these relics and these swords and everything has kind of been deserting it. His is the only one that still kind of works, but it doesn't completely.
That is the other kind of gripe I have with this, is there are some plot holes that I'm just like,
That's kind of what I was talking about, like with the ring thing, where it's
right.
Like, what? But like you kind of have to almost explain it yourself, because my explanation, headcanon, I guess, if you will, which I don't really like to do for authors, right, is that because she's got massive gaping wounds, even a relic can't keep the Quicksilver from getting into her blood.
Yeah, it's true.
Which
she
is
was
another
disemboweled.
Yeah.
Which that happened. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That whole, like, I really did love the, like, setup. Like, I was like, I don't really know where this is going, but I'm excited.
Oh, I was on for the ride. I was the same way. I was like, oh, okay.
Because, like, the plot just kept thickening, right? So first she's like, we're with her as she's, like, snatching up a gauntlet. Then she's, like, in a seedy bar talking with the guy who wants to fuck her all over again to get, like, her brother's, like, mask or his scarf back. And then she's literally, like, killing the Queen's Guard and then gets taken to this palace room in the middle of like the palace. No real explanation of like what it is. It's just a room, right?
They kept calling it the Hall of Mirrors.
Right?
Yes.
And it's just like, what does that mean?
We don't know.
And then before you know it, she's literally being disemboweled by this guy who's telling her like, yes, scream louder so I don't have to hurt you even more so the queen's satisfied. And you're like, wow, okay.
And we also like the little breadcrumbs, because there's a moment when Heron is doing that and he says something, I can't remember what it is, but it's something like, don't worry, death won't be that bad. You are going to be so lucky that you get to die. And it's like the first hint we get that he's immortal as well, and is not too happy with that.
That said, when Heron comes back at the end, I didn't like that. Not that he wasn't like reanimated by Maedra. I didn't have a problem with that. What I did have a problem with is when we see him at the end of that sequence when she starts fighting back, she's like literally pulling all the Quicksilver out and making it creep up Heron's body to suffocate him in theory. I assume it got all the way, it took out his goddamn eyeballs. So the thing is, he was so afraid of that happening. He was like, no, you can't do it. You can't open up these pathways again. Stop. He's like screaming at her to stop. Not terrified of dying, terrified that she's going to do exactly what she does. And yet at the end, he's not bothered to buy it at all. He's like, and Major is like, this was the plan all along, kind of. And it's like,
yeah, there's a lot I'm still kind of questioning between Madra and Bellicon and Malcolm.
yes,
Like, there's a lot of information that's just glossed over, which,
Yes.
I mean, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
That this is literally a fucking fight chase sequence that happens for chapters.
right. Yeah,
And they're siblings.
Well,
Well,
and
they call each other siblings.
Yeah, I don't think they're blood siblings, but
Well, as far as we still understand, Madra is human and the other two are Fae. Well,
Yeah.
one is a vampire, but was a Fae. So it's like, what?
but she is the Undying.
Which we don't know how.
Yep, but
Other than the fact that Malcolm said you have to kill all of us to kill one of us, but then Malcolm does die and Madra and Bellicon don't. So there's a lot of questions.
But does he? Here's the thing. He says you have to kill all of us to kill one of us. That whole shtick. I think what he means by that is Madra has the ability to bring them back.
That's what I'm assuming as
So
well.
I don't think Malcolm's really gone.
I don't think Malcolm's gone either. But
But he did have his head cut off, so, you know, it's hard to come back from that.
It
and
is hard to
melted.
come back from that.
Yeah.
It is very hard to come back from that.
I
But
mean, poor Saeris came back from it again.
Her head wasn't cut off, though.
No, but hot damn, she goes through it.
Yeah, she gets his claws, like, in her stomach again,
Yeah.
second time, but then up.
and then
So, like,
he even makes a comment about like stomach wounds being like the worst, and she's like, I just wish there had been a little moment where she's like, I fucking know.
I've been here before.
This just keeps happening to me.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe she should learn to protect her stomach.
Well,
Yeah, give this bitch some armor, guys.
wild
Leathers,
thing. It's
something.
like, they're like, oh, she knows how to fight. I'm like, that's great. She doesn't know how to defend herself though. Like, maybe help her with that. That'd be pretty cool.
Right, because she is killing the Queen's Guard in the very beginning, so she knows how to like back alley street fight against humans. But as we know in this book, the Fae way higher up in the food chain than humans.
Right?
Yep.
The number of times where I'm like, you're not going to give her a helmet. You're not going to give her a breastplate. Nothing.
Some leathers, something.
Just anything that isn't just regular clothes would be
I think
a
he
step
did
up.
like materialize leathers on her the one time.
Yeah.
But still, it's still leathers.
yeah.
Like, and he's over here wearing chest plates and pauldrons and shit.
Like all the time.
Yeah.
It's like I'm sure that you're especially once they get to the like battlements, it's like you don't got any spares.
Right.
None.
But to get back to your like thing about like the plot continuing to thicken. So we get to the Winter Court and we find out she's an alchemist, which is some like long lost magic wielder of unknown power and origins.
Well, and kind of like it's not like a true magic user where like she can manipulate magic. She specifically has the ability to manipulate Quicksilver.
And metal in general.
Well, no, she can't do it with gold or
Oh,
silver.
yeah.
She has to just melt those down like a normal smith would.
She can sense them though.
If they have
Yes.
been made with some like tiny little bit of Quicksilver, she can then control them.
Mm-hmm.
But she could also she could control it. She didn't have a lot of control over other metals because she did it with the gauntlet in the
But Kingfisher said that it would have had a little bit of Quicksilver in it.
The other thing that's I appreciated is that she didn't just go, well, you're a special one and that's why you're an alchemist. She was like, well, a whole bunch of people got trapped on the other side of these Quicksilver pools and they had babies and those babies had babies and now you've got a tiny drop of this.
I was going to say we do find out at the end because also there's a whole scene with a god.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved that.
Oh, really? I thought it was a bit much.
I liked it a lot.
I thought it was a little unnecessary, but I don't know. It felt like its whole purpose was just to set up the next book.
Which
but
you have to.
yeah, I suppose. But we find out from the god whose name I don't remember, but the god of chaos. He's like, no, there's actually like hundreds or thousands of you people back in Zilvara, and it's just, well, you're a little bit extra special.
Well, and I like that even he doesn't know why. He's
Yeah.
like, the fates have decided you two have to be together. I already separated you once. It was really annoying to watch that start happening again. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Like, And so it's like it is sort of giving this like end of the world kind of plot where it's like no matter what, you guys are going to tear it all down and we're gonna have to build it back up again. But you two specifically are like part of how that happens.
You're my problems.
Yep,
you're my problem, children.
Yeah.
I do like, so sometimes when there's like a god introduced, they try to paint, especially if it's like a god of chaos, a god of death or something, they always try to paint them as like evil, and I appreciate that they didn't do that.
No, he was giving strong Loki vibes to me, like here are my children, you are my ward. like you know, older Loki.
It's just but like the same thing is done with like Hades. A lot of times they try to paint Hades as like a bad guy and things, and it's like, did you read any of the mythology? He's not. He gives dad energy, really.
I guess I did love his two daughters, which were the sun gods.
I like their like really high like preteen vibes.
Yes. Well, like one of the first things they ask Saeris is, so how was it?
Yeah.
The sex.
How was
the sex?
What's it like?
Dad won't let us have sex with anyone.
It's so rude. Which one of us is prettier? Which one of us is better? Which one do you worship better?
Which is hilarious because in the audiobook she gives them that voice.
Really?
Oh yeah.
It's not as exaggerated, but like it's definitely that preteen like just ridiculousness.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting though to hear from the god of chaos that he was saying Kingfisher was his champion. Like it made sense because god of chaos, and he even says also the god of change. But I was just like, where did that come from? Was there breadcrumbs that I missed?
Fisher flips him off every time he walks by.
He flips all the gods off, which I understand. I can understand the whole like, look, I know you exist, but go fuck yourselves.
I don't think there were a ton of breadcrumbs for us to follow with that, but I think that was one of those reveals that it was like Kingfisher had way bigger fish to fry at the time. That he was like, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
we got other things to talk about.
Well, and it kind of informs how the Quicksilver already got into him, because they basically said that it happened long before he even, like, before his mother married Bellicon, all of that.
I thought it was because Bellicon, or at least it might be also one of those things that Bellicon takes credit for something, but I thought it was Bellicon forced him to go through a pool without his amulet.
That was my understanding.
That's, I think, what they made it sound like, but then later on you find out that he has had the Quicksilver in him since he was a child.
Huh. I didn't pick up on that.
Me either.
And the god of chaos said that he came to him when he was really small.
Yeah, he did come to that realm. That's how, like, I interpreted that Kingfisher was in whatever that realm was, but maybe not. I don't know. Gods are weird. They say things that are weird.
It's true.
The thing that I don't really understand is what the Quicksilver has to, like, we know that they're connected. Maybe it's a gift from the gods, right? Or something like that, but we don't really, like, know why that's the channel through which the gods can speak to Saeris.
I kind of just interpreted it as not only is the Quicksilver like portals between realms, but the gods can use it to connect to people. They just don't have to physically do it. They're powerful enough that they can do it, you know, at a distance.
Well, and who knows, maybe back in the day, the Quicksilver wasn't as dangerous as it is now.
Yeah. The question that I have is, so Saeris says that she thinks that the god has been talking to her through the Quicksilver for a very long time. Is the Quicksilver still sentient the way that we thought it was? And
I don't know. I think it's both, because I don't think maybe the god of chaos likes dirty jokes and songs, but you know,
or it's a different god.
Maybe
the jokes
girls
is the girls, and Simon is actually channeling the girls' power.
That's fucking hilarious.
That would be hilarious.
Be fucking funny as shit.
I really hope that's the case now.
I don't know.
Here's the question I have, because the thing with the god showing up is, to me, if one god shows up, that's a sign that others will show up as well.
Probably,
typically, yeah.
Right? And what we don't get a strong understanding of is it just the god of chaos and his daughters, for some reason, taking care of the tree of life? Or do the other gods or care about it? Have they ever been invested in all of this? Is it just the god of chaos happens to be really interested in life, and the rest of them are just off doing whatever the fuck they want? Like, where I was expecting it to be implied that the other gods were off somewhere else on this plane that Saeris is brought to, but it doesn't seem like that.
The only indication that we got is that the other gods, according to Change Chaos God, is they think that they should just let the tree die and start all over again.
And he doesn't want to.
So my interpretation of that is he has chosen to care for the tree when they have chosen not to. So I don't know where they are, but that's the only reason I kind of thought they weren't there.
Well, it makes me wonder, how, like, again, they abandoned it, or were they never really that invested to begin with?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You know? So what it feels like to me is that he's spending all this time fiddling at trying to keep it going, and that at some point, another of the gods, who's to say which one, because I don't even know what the other ones are like, is going to decide to end it and is going to invest themselves on the other side of that.
There definitely feels like some sort of god war is on the horizon.
Probably.
But before we get into that, we get to deal with more vampires.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that gets thrown in here is vampires.
And zombie vampires, kind of.
Like
They're thralls, but they're...
thralls, wraiths.
Well, they're thralls
ghosts,
that
yeah.
have died. And
Yeah.
so, and that turns them into what they call feeders. And so, yeah, I think wraiths is probably the closest. That's the imagery I had in my mind anyway.
The description of them climbing up the wall was... She said it that there was like 300 feeders climbing up the wall when they finally got to the arena or whatever. And I was like,
yeah.
Because even their saliva is venomous.
And the reason that they're occurring is because at one point the blood curse was put on the Fae. And so they used to feed on humans all the time, almost making them extinct. And then at some point it's just broken.
There was a cure made.
Which we find out was done by the witches, because also at some point there's witches now.
And somehow they're seen as not Fae. So they're not Fae and witches, they're just witches, which is like, is that a different type of humanoid? Because that's the way you talk about it.
They make it seem like it's a whole nother race.
Yeah.
Right, and not like a religious practice or a particular magic use.
We didn't get a lot of information.
No, we did not.
Maybe
But
in the next book.
I really, really liked, is Ichibald?
Yeah.
The one witch we get to see, she was a delight, and I hope maybe she's gonna get with Carrion, because I'm
That
here
would
for
be
that
funny.
too.
I'd be into that.
I would be here for that.
Yes, but so they've stopped the blood curse, and enough of them who've been living immortally for forever don't want to give it up. And especially our big bad for this book, Malcolm, is like, nope, I say no to that, and just continuously gets worse and worse with age, as it turns out.
Pretty common.
He's icky and obsessed with Kingfisher.
Yeah,
his
that
love.
that got real creepy real
Oh,
fast.
yeah. Listening to him say it was like,
I was like, no thank you.
I listened to that part at work today and was like, what is happening?
See, I thought it was a fascinating twist. I assume obviously we'll get details of it in the second book. It did really give me Jamie and
Randall
vibes from Outlander.
And I was like, that's not it.
Yeah.
Didn't like it. I had a similar reaction. I was like, bad vibes.
And I'm just
Bad
like,
vibes all around.
Bad touch.
What did Kingfisher put up with? And I don't want to know.
Well, he tells you what he didn't do. He gets really mad at Saeris for having been fed on by Kingfisher, because he was pissed that no matter what he offered Kingfisher, he wouldn't let him feed on him or vice versa.
Right.
And so you're like, ugh. But yeah, I think that's one of, spoilers have already been all around, but if you don't
that's
want
why we give the warning at the beginning.
If you don't want the ending spoiled, go away for 10 seconds. But like, I think one of the parts that I didn't like was that she ends up getting this best of both worlds solution, and I really wanted her to have more weaknesses because of this. Like, yes, you can come back, but it's not going to be fucking easy for you.
I think that's why I didn't like the God moment, is because it didn't solve anything in this book. She was already going to come back as a vampire. That was already resolved by what's his butt.
Taldeus,
who is Malcolm's son or no? I wasn't
Second in command.
right, but was he also his son? I was
I
very
got that-
confused.
I thought he was also his son because he at one
Maybe.
point says, "My father." You know what my father is like when they're talking about Everlane over
Yeah.
the river, right? And they're talking about how he's literally going to do some vile ass shit to Everlane if Kingfisher doesn't come through.
That could also be meaning sire, though.
It
Yeah,
could.
that's the thing. I
don't
didn't know.
I don't know.
That scene is a very different light once you know that he's actually a good guy,
Yeah.
and that Kingfisher knew he was a good guy.
Yeah. And well, and at the end, he also, when he's talking about how much he tried to kill himself
Yeah.
because he didn't want to be this anymore. And he says, "My father wouldn't." So I think he might actually be his son because they also talk about the insanity that Saeris is now the about to be appointed ruler of their kingdom, the vampire kingdom,
Mhm.
because it doesn't pass from
It doesn't pass bloodlines. It
Yeah.
passes to whoever slayed the
right.
Well, they did say that Malcolm never declared an heir
Right.
Yeah.
as well.
Yes. And so the implication is that it should go to Taldeus.
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 Because he's his son, right? Or it could be because he's his second. But I think he is. My opinion, maybe it's wrong, but I think.
But that brings us back to the reason I didn't like the god thing is I thought they were interesting characters and it was cool to be introduced to them and all that. But I agree with you. That leads to Saeris being now half fae, half vampire, so that she is something the Fates have never seen before, and so they will not be able to turn their eye on her. She's
Which apparently he did in a different way to Kingfisher, which is, I think, the explanation for his smoky powers that no one else seems to have. But I think it would have been more interesting because he didn't want her to go back. He wanted her to choose death.
yes.
Because that solves his problem, right? And so I think it would have been more interesting if he had said, "And what I will make will not be the person you were before." And not in a good way, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a harder decision to make, and it's more interesting, frankly.
Well, and you already get the problem of their lifespan solved when she becomes a vampire, right?
Yeah.
So vampire solves many, many, many problems. So it seemed a little unnecessary for her to also be half fae.
Yeah,
It gave me too much Akatar vibes.
that's
I haven't read it because I've seen too many things to know that I won't.
That's fair. And I probably should have said massive spoiler before I even hinted at anything. But at this point, it's like, if you don't know, then
you haven't been on the internet.
yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is the critiques that I have for it's really interesting because there's a lot of people who have a lot of negative things to say. But what their critiques really give me is that you just wanted it to be ACOTAR all over again.
Yeah.
And in some ways it does kind of have some of those touches to it, but it's not that. And so I don't know. I am kind of curious to see what the future of books specifically regarding romantasy, romance and fantasy and all of that will look like, because it seems like there are 1,000,001 books that are derivative of that style are coming out.
Of the Akatar style?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand why. You want to capture the massive fame that it has.
Yeah.
I think that's why I was so hesitant to read Quicksilver because I read A Court of Thorns and Roses and was kind of mid on it. And then I read another super popular romantasy, Fourth Wing, and I liked it. But then after reading a bunch of reviews and listening to people whose critiques were entirely valid, I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to say that I didn't like it because I did, but maybe I just allowed myself to not care about some of that stuff. So I'm like, am I really gonna? What is my opinion of Quicksilver even going to be? I don't know.
My opinion is I like it.
Here's the thing. If I am really truly being honest about how I feel about it, I think it fully blinds me to a lot of the flaws, because I was having such a good time. I've been looking for a book that would give me the same high that this book gave me for a long time, and I haven't been finding it. I've been like, this is a good book. This was fun. I really liked that, but I haven't had the I can't stop reading in so long. And so I just I kind of don't give a fuck.
Sometimes that's so I've had 5-star books where I've had little gripes about certain things or issues with pacing or something, and it didn't matter because the story was enough to make up for it for me.
And that's kind of where I think I landed with Quicksilver is I'm like, yeah, it's got flaws, and sure, they are kind of glaring, but also I had a really good time. The audiobook is so well done. So well done. Because it is, even though the book isn't dual POV, you do have two a male and female voice, which they do such a phenomenal job that, I mean, if the second book was out, I would already be on my phone right now.
Oh, for sure. I would have been like, you guys need to get the fuck out. I gotta go read. And I haven't felt that way in such a long time. It just, I not that I haven't enjoyed reading, but there's just something when that adrenaline hits and you're like, I gotta keep reading this book. And one thing that is really clear about what this author is good at, even if she sort of jumps some of her own plots sometimes, is that she keeps the pace going.
Yeah, you don't really get a lot of time to dwell on anything negative because you're like, and we're moving. And this is happening. Oh shit, Carrion's here. Cool.
I do often the moments that she did slow down were the romantic moments.
Yes.
And she was like, okay, and now we're going to sit in this. And I was like, good.
I do that. Maybe that is one more gripe I have is I do wish there was just I don't know. I wish there was just one more good romantic moment because I loved it when they went to the town of Ballard. That was so sweet and so nice. And I just wish there was one more moment like that because it makes sense why Kingfisher is kind of obsessed with Saeris because he's known he was going to be for forever, for basically his whole life.
Yeah.
His mom prophesized it.
She literally wrote a book on it.
Yeah. She literally wrote him a book that said, I'm going to die soon. Here's everything you need to know, coming from Mom, the Oracle. We get that information way too late.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that's shitty about Bellicon is you have to put this two pieces together, right? But Everlane has this conversation all the way back when Saeris is in the Winter Court about how she kills her mother the same way that or no, Hayden didn't. Basically, she's saying my mom died in childbirth, blah, 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 blah. You don't learn until the very end when Bellicon just out of nowhere goes, and I slit your mother's throat. So he told Everlane that all of that shit, all of the fucking shit that Everlane is hung up on about the fact that she thinks she killed her mother in childbirth was just because Bellicon told her that.
Yeah. How fucking dare you?
Yeah. And also, he doesn't give two shits about his daughter.
No.
He's like, if she has to die to help my fucking...
She's a pawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how Malcolm's like, she won't die. She's fine. And Bellicon's like, whatever, man. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's more coming from those three.
There has to be. We still don't know anything about Madra. We know almost nothing about her and how she fits into this. I want to punch her in the
face.
Yeah, no, she's awful. She's absolutely terrible.
Oh my god, her full conversation with Saeris in the beginning, I was creeped out the entire time.
Well, especially because again, the narrator in the audiobook gives her this light, soft voice. And it's just creepy.
Yeah, I was the entire time listening to that going,
I also liked how we just get little nuggets of lore throughout that come up kind of organically in the plot or the conversation between the characters, when
inappropriate times. That's what I like. It's at appropriate times that you get them.
Right. When after Kingfisher and Saeris have sex for the first time and he's like, come on, we have to go see the healer because, we need to make sure you don't get pregnant. And she's like, what are you talking about? I've been cleansed. That's the fucking word she used, isn't it? Cleansed?
Yep.
And that's when we just get the little lore drop of, oh, yeah.
Madra wants to control the population of the third. So
of women
70%
get sterilized?
Yeah.
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 And he was so mad.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I like that he's not necessarily mad because they can't have children. He's mad that choice was taken away from her.
Yeah. Also, don't touch her and
As a
die.
child.
That was the vibe.
Yeah.
Don't play with my things.
We do get a little bit of that from him.
Yeah.
That he has them scrub Carrion down with a special moss so he can't smell her on him anymore.
I found that to be just so hilarious.
He just keeps bringing it up too. He's like, man, they took off layers of skin with that shit.
my favorite thing about Carrion is this whole time he's got to like pretend to not be Fae in the Fae realm.
I had a moment of like, why did he do that? And I'm like, well, he's pretending to not be Fae for 1,000 years. Why would he stop unless he like needs to? He's been told to stay hidden for forever.
Yes. Well, and it's to no benefit to him at that point to reveal himself.
Right.
Who the fuck would believe him? You know?
Well, the only thing he could do is obviously drop his
glamours,
facade.
but that doesn't prove that he's like royalty.
No, not until Malcolm
him.
drinks his blood, and because his family was the cure of the start of the blood curse or something, you can't drink the original. It made sense. Vampire shit.
I just love that the random like roguish shit he did. Like, I'm too lazy to go down the mountain, so I'm gonna sleep in the forge. Just sleep here, it's fine.
Listen, I would have too.
It's warm in there. I was like, oh, I'd make myself comfy.
And people keep bringing Saeris shit, and like then I just get to take her food and water and shit.
Yes.
Right.
He's like, I'm aware that I'm not liked. Okay? I was not the chosen one. Okay? So, but I also like that he's just like Captain Jack Harknessing his way through everything, where he's like, okay, but did you know that I'm sexy? And it's like, no, bro, get out of here. We don't have time for this. And he's like, later though.
I also love that, like, at first you think he pretended to be Hayden, because he asked him too if he was Hayden before he took him, and he said that he was, and he was actually trying to protect Hayden.
Well, the other thing we find out is as soon as Saeris gets taken by Madra's guards up to the palace or whatever, Carrion's the one that gets him a job in the 7th ward to hide him. Like,
he gets him out of there and set up with a nice place to live, and it's like, oh.
That was maybe one of the other reasons that I kind of bought into him actually trying in this war against the vampires. It's like, I don't know. He seems to kind of just generally want to do the right thing.
Honestly, the first sign we get of that is just his first conversation with Saeris, where she's confronting him about beating up her brother. And he's like, okay, listen, I didn't really kick his ass. I just, roughed him up a bit. If I wanted to kick his ass, he'd be in worse shape. And the only reason I had to do that is because your brother was trying to gamble with money he didn't fucking have. So is it better that it's me who's going to stop before he gets too hurt? Or would you rather the person down the street who's going to steal all of his money and his shit and kill him? What do you want from me, Saeris? I still have a reputation.
The get that fucking thing out of the 3rd ward immediately before all of us die.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that wasn't like, you initially think that's fear for himself, and it was fear for everybody in the ward. He cares about the people in that ward. For his
grandmother, who I loved him describing like, well, she was not my grandmother. She's been I've been her ward, but then she was my ward, and then we were also like just friends, and it gets complicated with human lives. And I'm like, yes, Carrion. Yes, it does.
He just gets passed down to the next generation too. The next person is his new ward.
And I love that he says like, all the Swift women, they're just like, they're hard asses.
Yes.
And I just love him growing up this like Fae prince with these human women just being like, listen, do what I say or else.
Listen here, you little
get
shit.
It together.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, God, what do I even do? I'm like 800 years old, ma'am. And she's like, I don't give a shit.
I don't give a fuck.
I also love the fact that like after 800 years or 1,000 years, he could have been like, okay, I don't need your protection anymore. We'll separate, you guys go live your lives. But no, all of these women are like, this is our child that we pass down through generations, and everybody must protect the Fae prince. And
well, and to a certain degree, he raises them too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, he raises them, and then at a certain point, they become his friend for a while.
Yeah.
And then when they age to a certain point, I'm sure grandmother.
Right.
The question I have to ask, though, is at any point, did any of them also have like a romantic relationship with him?
I don't think that it's possible that none of them did. I don't think it's
right.
possible.
Yeah.
Right.
He's a sexy motherfucker. I don't even really know what he looks like all that much, and he's a sexy motherfucker.
We know he's ginger.
Yep.
And really fucking tall for a human.
Because he's not.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
That was our first hint, that it was like, what's this giant ginger doing in the fucking desert?
Yeah.
We don't belong there. We don't belong in the desert.
No, we do not belong in the desert.
I like at one point, so I was watching a TikTok video about this book because after I finished it, I was like, there are questions. Let's go on TikTok and see if they answer them. They didn't. I watched a video of this one two women talking about how Carrion says to Saeris at the very beginning is, even like dirty or unkempt, you're one of the most beautiful women and stuff. And they're like, how could that be? She's emaciated. She doesn't have any water. She says she's never washed her hair because they don't have enough water for that and stuff. And I'm like, because that's what everybody looks like.
Mm-hmm.
When everybody looks like that, you know, that's your comparison.
Yep.
And she wasn't as emaciated as everybody else because she'd been stealing water and food.
Mm-hmm.
So even at one point, she's trying to convince Heron of how bad it is in the third. And he says something along the lines of, well, it can't have been that bad. You don't look that bad.
True. Yeah.
And she gets really frustrated and basically has to bite back a remark of like, that's because I've been stealing to get what I have, you know?
Their water ration for the day is 6 ounces.
That's crazy.
I try to, my goal is to drink like somewhere between a third to a full gallon of water a day.
Mm-hmm.
If I had 6 ounces,
it's less than a can of soda.
yeah.
Well, and I want more lore on this of how the world came to be this way, because here's the thing that's kind of flipped on its head. It's not Earth as we know it, and then she goes to this Fey realm, and the Fey realm is so different. When she goes, Earth as we know it is not reflective of what we know. It's got 2 suns. There's never night.
That would drive me insane,
right?
By the way.
But if it's all you've ever known, you know.
I know. I just like dark. I like it out when it's dark.
There's basically no plant life. The animal life is just like rats and shit. And then when she goes to this Fey realm, well, now that's more of what we know of, like Earth. And so what it has me sort of thinking and wondering is, at some point, did the Fey take over Earth, call it a different name, and force humans onto this other plane or planet or whatever?
But I feel like I'm trying to remember. I thought at one point they were talking about Zilvarin was more lush.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is, yes, it's been within the last 1,000 years. It's been this terrible, awful desert. But there is some plant life because Saeris talks about there used to be traders that would sometimes come and have like plants or vegetables and stuff they were selling. So I feel like there's some lore or history where something bad happened on the quote unquote human realm.
The only other thing I can think of is that Medra has done a really strong job of getting people to think of Fae as fairy tales, right? And that's not real, and has eradicated that part of their history. And so I'm sure that after 1,000 years, people don't remember a time when there wasn't 2 suns.
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder if that second sun has something to do with her immortality.
Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot that I need to know and that needs to be told to me.
Correct.
Also, did I just miss this? What the fuck is Anarath Moor?
Anarath Moor means release us.
That's what it means?
Mm-hmm.
I missed that.
They were chanting it in the Colosseum because they were watching him through the maze, and he was trying to find the coins so that he could release them.
I totally missed that.
Carrion asks, Carrion or Saeris asks Lorith what it means, and he translates it to release us.
Totally missed that.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you know what my favorite is? Onyx.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Onyx the fox.
Sweet little white fox with black tipped ears.
So Onyx, the big question I had there is Onyx is this supposedly wild fox who is living in the Old Forge. And the way Onyx acts is very much like a domestic animal.
Mm-hmm.
So
not at first. He bites her.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then almost immediately it acts like a little puppy.
I will say that was one of my favorite parts of the book. And the humor, I think, is... I really hope she like continues to play that up, because the humor was one of the things that was really like keeping me going. Mm-hmm. But she's with Kingfisher when she finds the fox, and he's like, "It's gonna bite you," and she's like, "No, it's not." And then immediately it bites her, and she's like, "I was wrong." And like hold on for a really long time.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved that. I love that the fox is, he's basically a cat.
Yeah.
And the Kingfisher is like, this is literally a pest. You were bringing a rat into our house, the equivalent of a rat. And she's like, my best friend.
But Fluffy, I also love that Onyx grows on Kingfisher. Because at one point, he shows up and he jumps up into like Kingfisher's lap on the bed. And he doesn't pull away. He lets him snuggle in. I'm like, oh, he likes him. He likes him.
It's true.
Sorry. I don't know why the fox fascinated me, but I was like, yay, pet.
Anytime there's an animal,
I mean, yeah.
we love it.
As long as the animal doesn't die.
Yes. Yes.
I also love that he just uses his magic for like anything. It's like, oh, we need to clean this up. Psha, magic.
Yeah, boom, done.
I don't really understand the laws or limitations to his magic, but I also don't really care.
Yeah.
So
I laughed so hard when they spent all day cleaning the old forge.
Yeah.
And then was it Renfus that came in
Yes.
and was like, "What are you doing?" And then he just like whooshed it completely clean. She's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? You motherfucker."
I get it from Kingfisher's perspective. One, he wants to fuck with her. Two, when he said like, I want to see if you know what a hard day's work is. Like, I mean, I kind of get it. Let's test this woman, see what she's really like.
Also, 3, it gives him a good excuse to get to be around her and still get to be an ass.
Yeah.
And
so win-win.
Also, she's probably bending over a lot, so you get to stare at that behind.
I was
There
thinking
you
it
go.
too. Atta girl.
Air 5.
Yes. I also like that with the animosity at best that the two of them had at the beginning, that she doesn't shy away from being like, but they also think each other are hot. Like, because, and not in the way that a lot of fated mates do, where they're like, I can't help it, I'm just drawn to him. She's like, okay, but no. Like, he took his shirt off in this hot, sweaty space with me. And so he's hot, sweaty, and doesn't have a shirt on,
And
like,
covered in tattoos.
And I'm human. I'm only human. Like, what else am I gonna do except for be hot and bothered?
I was a little confused. Like, did the other Fae have tattoos and they just never came up? Why does he have so many tattoos? Like, I knew why he had so many tattoos, because they're physical manifestations of major life events. But like, the only other person that we talk about having tattoos is the healer lady.
Telenia.
Yeah.
And those were actually like inked into her skin. They're not magically appearing
Right.
tattoos. That was something her and her husband did on their 5th anniversary.
Right.
So I get the impression that I don't think a lot of people have them. It has more to do with like your experiences and stuff and how magical you are. Because she gets them from Fisher.
Well, yes. She gets, especially the mating ones from Fisher, but what's the one that's like above her collarbone that's like a little bird or something?
Yeah, it's a bird, but she got that the first time they had sex.
Yeah, but he said he couldn't take that one away. So it's not a mating one the way the other ones are. So
Yeah.
what is that one?
The other thing that's confusing about that one is that she basically describes it as it coming off of his skin and onto her skin.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, and maybe this will be like discussed in the next book, but my impression of it was that was coming from Fisher, not from the gods, that was something he accidentally did to mark her as his.
That's possible.
I don't know. We don't get enough answers.
I want more answers. But it was long enough. The book was already long enough.
It was pretty long,
Yeah.
but I never felt like when I was listening to it that it was too long, other than the fact that I knew that this day of recording was coming and I had to get my act together.
Hence, I listened to the last bit of it at work today.
Yeah.
But I was aware of how much time I had left in the book, and I had a
was
full
all good.
8-hour shift. It was fine. I only had like an hour and a half left.
She didn't make it seem like a long book. It seemed like a book that had a lot in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It didn't stop.
So at the end, when they're in Gilthrai, one of the things I really liked about it, the plot that came out overall, is that while it was like very quick and everything was coming at you at all these times, that you were getting plot that mattered to the book earlier on, that you're like, oh, that explains everything. And now you're also getting plot that moves the story forward, and you're getting plot that you're like, I know I don't know why this matters yet, but it's going to later on.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about it was that amidst all of that, they again brought back around the like Fae are tricky thing. Like, yes, we get the coin toss plot point, but we also get Malcolm's labyrinth. We get the reveal that Belican and Madra have been working together and all of that. However, it at one point fully turned into a Bond monologue where the villain is like, and this is why you're going to die. And I was like, why are you revealing your secrets? Just kill them and move on. Like, this makes no sense. And Malcolm is like such a drama queen that he's like, excuse me, Madra, I'm telling a story here. And so I don't know. I just love that whole scene. And it makes me really excited to see what else is going to come, because now there's going to be all this consequence, right? Like these souls have been released, and so that the power on that land has changed. And so I'm just like, I just have this feeling in my gut that more happened at that chunk of that ending that is going to play into the next book that we did not realize mattered in the moment,
or that we didn't see because we only have Saeris's point of view,
right.
She dipped into the labyrinth.
Right.
Well, I think one of the key things that I'm anticipating is going to be a massive question is, okay, so now Saeris is the queen of the vampires because
of course she is.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
Because reasons.
Because reasons.
I mean, combat, ascension by combat, I don't really know what the exact phrase is not uncommon.
Yeah, it's true.
But because they're on land in Gilfry that is now has Fae magic, but it is still the vampires' land, kind of, or it seems to be. Like, I think what I'm anticipating is that Saeris's actual physical representation of Fae and vampire coming together, sure, probably represents culturally them coming together a little bit, but I think there's also going to be some weird magic shit.
Well, and because this author has shown us she knows how to do angst well,
Yes.
What I imagine, because Kingfisher still has to be the lord of his land,
Yes.
which is on the other side of the river. Sorry.
You okay?
Not all I can think.
I've got all the horses.
Somebody's on the wrong side of the river.
Fucking mummy, man.
Anyway. I just made a little joke for me.
Apparently Danny too. So
Yeah.
It made me happy.
yeah. I didn't get it until you said the mummy, and I was like, oh yeah.
I've seen that movie way too many times. I like to stare at Brendan.
Of
Who
course.
doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't like to stare at literally everyone in that movie except
It's
for Benny?
true.
Like, literally,
Right?
they're all hot.
They made the mummy hot.
They made him so hot.
Oh my
So
god.
Anywho. So, the problem is going to be that they, like, she can't cross the river, right? Because she literally cannot.
Well, we don't know, because if she's half Fae, maybe she doesn't have that problem.
Yeah.
I just don't think that she's going to give up this opportunity for angst.
She better not.
She better not. And it's going to be one of those things where Kingfisher is not really accepted there because he spent all of this time killing all of them. It's going to be so much sexy tension.
Obviously, there's still a lot left to be done with the relationship between Saeris and Kingfisher, but I'm like, I need a new relationship that fulfills that, like, burning early tension, and I'm like, it better be a good one, god damn it.
I want it to be Carrie.
Well, I can't tell if this is going to be one where they continue the romance of the first couple, and that's like the story arc, and there are maybe other romances happening in the background, but they're not the key romance, or if it's going to be a new romance each book, no new perspective each book. I have no idea, but it feels like it's Saeris' story still.
Yeah, I think it would still have to be. I hope what she does is what Rachel Gillig did with the Shepherd King series. So in One Dark Window, the relationship is between the two main characters whose names I can't remember right now, Raven, and I don't remember what her name is. But in the second book, they continue that relationship and that romance, but also give us an entirely new one that is honestly even more interesting. And I hope that's what she does. She's like, well, we still have the main romance. It's still happening. But also look at this shiny thing over here.
Two shinies.
Two shinies.
That's There's quite a few series that do that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like the Muscles and Monsters series, like the first couple is still ever present because then the next person that gets involved with someone is her brother.
Well, but like I think with this one, like Wiggle said, Saeris still has to kind of be the main character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we need new main characters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We'll find out in the fall because guess what? I'm gonna be picking up that book right away.
Oh, hells yeah.
Right away. I'm gonna be like, shut the fuck up. I gotta read this book. Get out of my
Leave
face.
me alone.
Get out of my fucking face. So,
I might wait.
I'm hoping it'll come out. Usually when they're this big, they come out at the same time.
Yes.
I hope so.
And I hope so too.
Yes. In the meantime, I think it's ratings time.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Yeah.
What is your spice rating?
I'm gonna give it like a 2.5. There wasn't that much spice that we weren't ever present in the spice when it was happening.
Yeah.
It was good spice, but I want. We also didn't get the like final spice. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think they could. She
Yeah.
needed to leave us on a cliffhanger there.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of work that there were a lot of things that needed to be talked about. There were a lot of things going on.
It was busy.
That was not possible. I am going to give it a 3 because it for me it was hitting. It was hitting, and I was like, yes. There were a few like kinkier moments, but not that much. But more than that, it was just like it felt plot needed.
Mm-hmm.
Like you couldn't just take it out of the plot and the story would be the same. And it also was like really was bringing the romance and the angst into the sexy scenes, which I like because sometimes they feel detached.
Yeah.
But also romantasy doesn't have as much smut. It just usually doesn't.
It doesn't because there's too much plot on top of it.
So that considered, I think I might even bump it up to a 3.5. I was having a good time, ladies. I was having a really good time.
I'm going to go in between the two of you and give it a 3.
Okay.
I liked it. I did want just like a smidge more, but
I'm just greedy.
I think honestly that's probably what it came down to. As I was like, we're right there. Just keep going. Just
He has sexy
keep going.
evaporation powers. Come on.
Right? That could have been used more in the foreplay. All he did is just turn the lights off and then like magic her clothes away. I mean, come on.
He at one point she describes his magic going inside her, but not in the like.
No.
It was much more like we're becoming one, not we're becoming one. So
and you know there was a biting scene.
Mm-hmm.
The
That was a good
was-
biting scene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so I recently saw the movie Nosferatu, which if you haven't heard about is it's like a more in-depth version of the vampire movie that you should at least know about if you've never seen it, right? Which is a really strong ripoff of Dracula, the book. Like really strong. It's like I'm pretty sure they got sued even, but there's like a little bit of controversy because people are like, why is it sexy when he's gulping down her blood like that and he looks like a monster? And I'm like,
oh my,
have you met Booktok? And so I kept thinking of that because he bites in a similar spot. Like he doesn't bite like in the book, you know, in most vampires they bite kind of like your jugular area.
Mm-hmm.
And he's biting down on like at her chest.
Yeah.
And Nosferatu like that, he like bites where your heart is, which is anyway, you should check it out.
That's also where the swell of the bosom is.
Oh, sure is.
They also do that in Queen of the Damned.
Yes, they did.
Right? And so I really liked that aspect. But that's just me.
All right, on to your romance rating. I feel like this one's going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to give it a solid 4 because I feel like it built up appropriately. They didn't rush to the finish line. She doesn't even say I love you at the end of the book. He does. She's got a lot of other shit going on. And I like that she didn't just throw it in there because she's like, well, you said it and I didn't get a chance to say it before. So I got to tell you, I love you. I really liked that. And like, I was rooting for them.
I actually agree with you because I liked the build up and the fighting and the banter.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are giving it a 4?
I really liked it. I told you I had a good time with this book.
No, I'm not saying anything against the book. I guess I didn't get as much romance as y'all are talking about. I was gonna give it closer to like a 3.
Then
You can give it a 3.
Well, I'm going to.
Good.
Okay.
Liz says 3.
I think the reason that I wanted to give it a 3, and I couldn't really go higher than that, is because while I did enjoy the angst and the back and forth and all of that, I was almost more interested in the like main fantasy plot than the romance plot.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I also was there a little bit, but I can't tell if that's just because I'm Danny and fantasy plot.
No, I think it's romantasy, right? It is equally romance and fantasy. So
I thought she did a really good job of interweaving them. So I didn't really.
I was having a good time either way.
Yeah, you're right, Wiggs. Like, it wasn't like, oh, and here's the romance part, and oh, here's the fantasy part. It was kind of all intermingled well together.
Mm-hmm. And it also might have just been that it was hitting at the right time.
I mean,
big facts.
Yeah.
Big facts.
You know how that happens sometimes where you're like, and this was not the right time for me to read this book, and now I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually do.
So I'm just having the opposite effect, maybe.
Okay. Your overall rating.
I gave it a 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any reason in particular why I didn't go higher. I liked it a lot, but it just isn't quite up to the level of like a 4.5 or a 5 for me, especially because I am currently reading a 5-star book for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that...
And honestly, that might just be the timing thing. Like, if you weren't reading that right now,
if
you
I
might have a
wasn't
very
reading it
different opinion.
right now, I probably would have gone higher, but like... I know what that feels like, right? I'm going to have book depression after that book.
Yeah, I know what that feels like. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it on Goodreads, I think I put it as a 4.25, but since we don't do quarters, I will bump it up to a 4.5 for me.
I also gave it a 4.5. I think if they had done a little bit more editing on it, and if if she had tweaked some of the representation of the characters, like you say,
yeah, I
think for me it would have been a 5. But some of those things were just like, they took me out of the book.
Yeah.
Kind of like the male-female thing. Like, I understand that it's like the culture that you're creating, but it just kept taking me out of the book.
Honestly, if she would have just made up 2 random fucking fey words to be male-female, it would have been so much better.
Right. Or just use them less. Use their names more. Like, she used it so much, and I think that's part of why it stood out so starkly to me.
I think that comes down to an editing issue, because the other editing issue I really noticed is she repeated words a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, within the same sentence, she would say like neck twice, or she would, things like that, and it happened a lot. Is one of my least favorite things to read. I hate it. It's such a big pet peeve of mine.
But I also can't deny the high that I was on reading this book, and so for now, I might go back and read it later on and be like, this was not it. But for now, it's a 4.5 for me.
That's fine, though.
Yeah. Perfect.
That brings us to recommendations.
My recommendation is going to be A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stacia Stark, which is the first in the Kingdom of Lies series that she's got. I listened to this over the holiday break, and it's similar where it's a fey world, and there's like warring factions, things like that. It's got an interesting magic system. Like, I'm really, really interested in the magic system and want to know more. The main character has the ability to stop time for a very short amount of time.
Oh, okay. Very video game-esque.
And but that's her only power, right? So each person is given a power, or is born with a power, and the rules of the kingdom are that you must have that power taken away from you at birth, and then it will be returned to you when you're 21, and somehow the gods will bless it and make it stronger. Yeah, some shady shit's going down.
For sure.
And our girl somehow did not get her powers taken away from her. And if you're caught harboring powers before you're 21, death. Just death. Like, we're done with your shit. You're dead. Family's dead. Fuck off. So, she's got a whole thing going on. And in her attempts to escape and survive, she runs into a hunky man.
Oh, I love a hunky man.
Yes. Similarly, at the end, the plot thickens real quick, and you're like, what? But I will say that series is farther along, so I get to read the next one soon.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. So check it out.
What about you, Liz?
So I've already mentioned the book that I'm reading kind of like in a reverse situation. We read Quicksilver and then I needed a recommendation to like come off of it a little bit. So When the Moon Hatched is one of the big recommendations from Quicksilver by Sarah A. Parker. I'm not far enough along into it to say if this is a good recommendation or not, but it's what you're getting. It's also in a fae world, and our main character, Rave, I think is how you pronounce her name, or Raven. No, there's no N in it. Why would I say that? Anyway, she is like this low-born fae who ends up becoming an assassin, and they're trying to overthrow the king, and there are fae who have magic and fae who don't, and like the people with magic are really oppressing the people without magic, and there's like gods involved in all of it, and dragons. Like, you find this out right away. The moons that are in the sky are all dead dragons.
Oh.
So instead of like falling, and like falling down on the ground and dying, they fly up into the atmosphere and like curl up into a ball and become moons.
Okay.
That makes me really sad.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that one. And then if you want to go more of the like angsty action adventure route, I would say Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Shipeko, which is vampires, not fae. And the main character, he reminds me of like if you took Kingfisher and took away some of the like angst of having a millennia of like shit being on his shoulders and made him young and a little gung-ho about just killing the vampires. That's like the main character. And the romance in that one, I would say it's romantasy, is a throuple. So you get three peoples.
I do love a throuple romance.
Yeah.
I want to back up just a second because I realized I said the wrong thing. It's not when you're 21, it's when you're 25. different age. Anyway, that was bothering me that I got it wrong.
And nobody was going to know except for like
no
one
was going to know except for that one person who's also read it.
What you got, Danny?
So I am going to do A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jessen. We did a show about it. It is also a romantasy. It's more, there isn't like a fae aspect to it or vampire aspect to it, but it is, there isn't a fae aspect to it or anything like that, but it is set in like Norse mythology almost. And there is the gods aspect of it and people who have who are gods touched per se. And then there is also the like family issues involved and everything, and the savior aspect a little bit for the female main character.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's also a very good book. I can't wait for the next one.
I think that one's spring of 2025.
I think so too.
A lot of good books are coming in 2025 is what I'm hearing. Also, Danny already mentioned it, but we did an episode on it, so check it out aggressively.
I was going to say, you're so aggressive. All right, folks. So that brings us to the end of the episode. If you like this episode, you can find us out there on the socials at Wrong Dust Jackets on, I would say, primarily TikTok, but who knows if it's going to be around anymore, and Instagram. Or you can go to our website, wrongdustjackets.com. You can find a list of all of the episodes we've done, which is a staggering like 80 some. And you can see the episodes that we are going to be doing next, as well as our blog posts, which I may or may not have updated recently, more than likely not. And we would so much appreciate it. It would make me so happy if you gave us 5 stars, like, review, comment, whatever is available to you on your podcast listening app. It would help us so very much. That's all I got. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.